Okay, here's some problems to review. These are rational exponents review, so you can take a look at this. I've got it up here. And what you can do is you can just freeze your screen and then you can try these problems and then I'll do the solutions so you can see how well you're doing. So just take a look at those. Like I say, just pause it and then try these problems and I'll get back and we'll do these. Okay, so pause your screen, try the problems. Okay, hopefully you did them all. So let's take a look. And I'll go through these. So hopefully you got them written down. And let's get to work here. So here's letter A, letter A. And that was 27 to the 4/3. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this. And remember, we want to make the number smaller first before we make it larger because it's a lot easier to deal with it. So I'll rewrite this as 27 to the 1/3 power and then to the 4th. Now remember, the rules of exponents say when we're raising the powers, we multiply. So 4 times 1/3 is 4/3, so that's all right. But this allows me to take the cube root of 27 first. Remember, the 1/3 power is the cube root. And what's the cube root of 27? That's going to be 3. Because 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 is 27. So it's going to be 3 to the 4th, and now I can raise 3 to the 4th power. 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81, so it's going to be 81. Okay, so I always tell my students root first, power second. Okay, letter B. This was -8 to the 5/3. And the first thing is well, that's okay, -8, it's fine. So we'll do the same thing. We'll say -8 to the 1/3 and raise that to the 5th power. Okay, root first, power second. Remember, when we have the rules of exponents, when we're raising exponents to powers, we multiply the exponents. Or when we're raising numbers to powers, I should say. Not raising exponents. When we're raising numbers to powers, we multiply the exponents. Raising numbers to powers, we multiply the exponents. So this is the same. So this is going to be, and what's the cube root of -8? Well, -2 times -2 times -2 is -8, so that's just -2. I'm going to raise that to the 5th power, so -2 times -2 times -2 times -2. Well, I'm going to have an odd number of negatives, so I'm going to have a negative. 5 negatives in a row make a negative if you multiply those. And then 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. So it's going to be 32. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. Okay? And letter C. And this looks the same. I basically could do the same way. I mean, I've got the negative in front of the 8, so it can attach to the 8. So it's basically the same thing, so it's not anything real tricky. So it's just exactly the same. I guess probably I could have left the negative sign out in front and then had a negative at the end. So I think maybe that was the intent of that problem. So, but it looks to be the same. Okay, let's take a look at letter D. 4/25 to the -3/2. Now there's a number of ways to do this, but the way I do this is I just use the rule of exponents that says that A over B. We have this rule over here. I guess I'll write it over here just to review it. A over B to the n is the same thing as A to the n over B to the n. So what I'll do is I'm going to apply that rule over here, and I'm just going to say this is going to be the same thing as 4 to the negative 3/2 all over 25 to the negative 3/2. And I'll do this problem two different ways because this is one way. And then, in order to take care of these negative signs, I'm just going to reverse that. So I'll put this in the top, and that makes this 25 to the 3/2 all over 4 to the 3/2. In other words, when we move the expression from the numerator to the denominator, it changes the sign of the exponent. And then we can write this like we were doing these before. This would be 25 to the 1/2 power cubed. So I'll break this up. I'll root first, power second, and this is going to be 4 to the 1/2 power cubed. Now what's the square root of 25? Remember 1/2 is the square root, so that's going to be just 5, so it's going to be 5 cubed over, and the square root of 4 is 2, 2 cubed. 5 times 5 is, 25 times 5 is 125. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, so that would be your answer. Okay. And I was going to do it another way, but I think that this is probably the safest bet. Yeah, because we'd have to do some kind of switching these around, and I don't think it would work very well for you to try to combine that. So I think this is the safest bet. Make your exponents positive by putting them on the opposite side of the fraction, and then go from there. Okay. So there's A through D.